Hello again, Year 7. I hope you've had a lovely half term. Um, and we're going to test you out first of all in today's lesson by asking if you can still recall some juicy details about Roman London and Roman Britain. So pen and paper at the ready. I'd like you to write as much as possible, as much as you can remember for these two questions. Number one, how do historians have so much knowledge about Roman London? Now you can answer that in a paragraph or you can answer that in bullet points. Try and write down as much information as possible. How do historians have so much knowledge about Roman London? As many juicy details as possible, please. Number two, were all native Celts accepting of Roman rule? Again, as many juicy details as possible. That can be in a paragraph or that can be in bullet point form. So give yourself 5 minutes to do that, please, Year 7. Wow, 5 minutes have gone by very quickly, haven't they? So how do historians have so much knowledge about Roman London? Well, hopefully you've written down the keyword of archaeology, and we have access to artifacts and hidden elements of Roman London in terms of buildings and roads, and we have access to some fantastic information about Roman London from excavations by archaeologists. In modern day London, we can see how Romans lived here. Also, you may have written down another keyword of Pompeii. So the preserved city or town underneath the foot of the Mount Vesuvius that was preserved in extraordinary detail allows historians and archaeologists to see how people in Roman times lived. And so that's how we can understand about Roman London, about Roman and places of the Roman Empire. Second question, were all native Celts accepting of Roman rule? Well, some of them were, some of them had to. They were forced to. The Romans took England, the British Isles at the time, by force, but they were not all accepting. Hopefully you've written down the keyword of Boudica, the warrior queen who fought against the Roman Empire, leading a failed war against them, and she was not accepting of Roman rule. She did not want to be falling in line with the Roman Empire and changing her way of life for that. And so many people view her as a hero. Some people, though, do not. Excellent, well done, and good work for the starter. Yes. Okay. Next activity. Just leave space for a title. I know you're thinking, what is the title for today? Just leave space for one. It will appear on the next slide. On the top picture, I have Londinium, which, as you know, is London. And that's from 1000 AD to 400 AD. And that's how it looked in Roman times. That's how it looked thousands of years ago. And then below, we have a picture of London in the Dark Ages, around 500 AD, which is after Roman London. Now these are paintings, diagrams, pictures of the same location, London, at different times in history. Can you please write down as many differences as you can see and think of between the two pictures? And can you think of any reasons why these differences might exist? Remember, the Dark Ages, 500 AD, is after the Roman times. It's after Roman London. So give yourself 5 minutes to do this. Excellent. Well done, Year 7. 5 minutes is really flying by, isn't it? So as you can see, there is a lack of roads in the Dark Ages picture compared to Roman London. There are not as many buildings. There might be not as many people. You can see more boats. The buildings seem smaller, less developed. You might infer that there's a smaller population. You might infer that they are less refined in how they are constructing buildings and roads and things like that. Their infrastructure is worse. So these are things I would expect you to write down. Maybe you've got something that I haven't even thought of. I'm sure you have. Okay, moving on. The title for today is How Has Migration Affected Britain? Our learning objectives for today to describe some of the changes brought about by migration. We want to really think about how migration has affected British society sort of through the prism of Rome and London. First task after you've written the title, please. In AD 410, the last Romans left Britain and they went back to Rome. What impact might this have on Britain? Can you think of 3 changes that you think might happen if the Romans leave? Give yourself a couple of minutes to think. Would we go from strength to strength, or would things get worse? Please write down your answers. Okay, I've got 3 questions for you. Year 7. Why do people migrate and what impact does it have on society? Number 1, why did the Romans come to Britain in the first place? Why do you think the Romans might have left Britain? And why do you think new people may have arrived in Britain after the Romans had left? Now, this may require some inferences. This might require a bit of guesswork for you, but try and think of an answer to those 3 questions. Obviously, the red question is the hardest question. So think about, why did the Romans come to Britain in the first place? Why do you think the Romans might have left Britain? And why do you think new people may have arrived in Britain after the Romans had left? The key word for today's lesson is migration. That means moving from one region to another. So that might be a country, it might be a town. In this instance, we're thinking about leaving a country, leaving Britain, leaving England to go elsewhere. A key point to remember is the Romans did not leave Britain empty. The majority of people, the Celts, they stayed behind. It was only the Romans who left. So give yourself 5 minutes, or a bit longer if you need to write down those answers to those questions. Okay, here's what you could have written down. Why do people come to Britain? Because Britain was a rich country. It had lots of minerals, it had copper and gold, it had farmland, it had raw materials. And why did the Romans leave? In around 410 AD, the city of Rome was under attack from invaders, and the emperor called back the Roman army to help defend it. Many important Romans went with the army, so only ordinary Celts stayed. They carried on living their lives as farmers and traders, but without being controlled by the Romans. The answer to question 3. Because Britain was no longer protected by the Roman army, new invaders began to arrive in Britain. First the Angles, and then the Saxons. Sailed over from North or Western Europe, what we now know as Germany. They settled all over Britain, and they split Britain into lots of different kingdoms. And what I'd like you to do with this information is you're not going to copy it down, you're going to dual code it. You can use pictures, words, you can only use the words in bold, but you can use some symbols, pictures, numbers to help you remember this information. I'll show you an example on the next page. So you might, for instance, for this sentence, in around 410 AD, the city of Rome was under attack from invaders and the emperor called back the army to help defend Rome. Now what I might draw is a big city, which is going to be Rome, and I can write Rome because it's in bold. I might draw a sword, shield, spears to show that it's being under attack, it's being attacked by barbarians. And I might draw a hand signal of someone calling back the Romans. and I might draw a Roman soldier, maybe marching back to Rome away from Britain. I might draw the British flag to show that. So I'm drawing pictures to represent the keywords. That is dual coding. I know for a fact that Dr. Smith is a huge fan of dual coding. He really, really believes in it very strongly. So if you become an excellent dual coder, then you'll not only become better at your subjects, you'll be a better historian, but you'll also impress Dr. Smith, and that's something to think about as well. There's an example of what I'd like you to do. So you're not copying out the information, you are dual coding it in your books, please. You do that for all three pieces of information, and as always, this is on Show My Homework for you. Excellent. Okay. So allow me to explain something for you. Romans leave, and then the Anglo-Saxons, they arrive in England, or Britain. Some Roman towns like London and Canterbury started to fall apart. Sometimes they were ransacked by raiders, or people simply lacked the skills and money to keep things going. As you remember, the Romans built them. The Romans had this knowledge and this of architectural skill and engineering, but the Celts didn't have that. England, Angleland as it was called, was used for the country for the first time. So there's a name for that country. A new language was developed, English. You may know it. Migration has had a huge impact on Britain, and we can very much see its influence today. The Anglo-Saxons controlled Britain until 1066. Who can remember what happened then? Think back to the start of year 7. So that information will be useful for you for the next step. Okay, the main activity for today is what I'd like you to do is using the information sheets attached to Show My Homework. I would like you to complete and make an incredibly juicy, detailed informational leaflet about the changes brought to Britain by migration by the Romans and the Anglo-Saxons. Make sure you use the keywords from the information sheets. Set out your information clearly and in your own words. Add any information from your own knowledge or previous lessons. Decide what the biggest effects of these two groups were on Britain today. Write about them and explain why they were the biggest. I'd like you to be as creative as possible. You can do it in whatever themes you like. You can set it out as Romans versus Anglo-Saxons, who had the bigger impact, who was more, who left Britain or created better things for Britain. Be as creative as you want. I'd like you all to take a picture of this and upload to your teacher on Show My Homework. So you're going to use as much detail as possible. You're going to dual code. You're going to have some wonderful pictures. Use as much colour as possible. Be really creative here, Year 7. And finally, looking at your leaflet, which you hopefully have spent around 20 or 25 minutes making, what was the most significant change brought about by the Romans leaving Britain and the Anglo-Saxons arriving? Which had the biggest impact in your opinion? You write these down. You may want to share your ideas with a friend, and you may want to bounce some ideas back off one another. That's absolutely fine. And what I'd like you to do is, once you've, when you upload your picture to Show My Homework, leave a comment on that, or a further comment on Show My Homework, and tell your teacher what you think were the biggest changes left by the Romans and the Anglo-Saxons. This could be from your discussion with a friend, or it could be something that you've just thought of yourself. So thank you very much, Year 7. I look forward to seeing my classes' information leaflets, and like very much to hear what they think were the biggest changes brought about by the Anglo-Saxons and the Romans. Thank you very much, and I will have another lesson ready for you next week. Thank you very much.